Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam.
77, no?
Sir, it's 77.
Tato Jayamudirayat Nashtaprayashu Badrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtikir. Alright, reading from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita as it is, Chapter 18, The Perfection of Renunciation, Text 77. Tacha saṁsmṛtya saṁsmṛtya rūpam aty-adbhutam hareḥ vismayo me mahān rājan hṛṣyāmi cha punaḥ tacha saṁsmṛtya rūpam aty-adbhutam hareḥ vismayo me mahān rājan hṛṣyāmi cha punaḥ. Someone would like to chant?
Tacha saṁsmṛtya saṁsmṛtya rūpam aty-adbhutam hareḥ vismayo me mahān rājan hṛṣyāmi ca punaḥ. Tacha saṁsmṛtya saṁsmṛtya rūpam aty-adbhutam hareḥ vismayo me mahān rājan hṛṣyāmi ca punaḥ.
Saṁsmṛtya saṁsmṛtya rūpam aty-adbhutam hareḥ vismayo me mahān rājan hṛṣyāmi ca punaḥ. Tacha saṁsmṛtya saṁsmṛtya rūpam aty-adbhutam hareḥ vismayo me mahān rājan hṛṣyāmi ca punaḥ.
Okay, please repeat. Tat, that. Cha, also. Saṁsmṛtya, remembering. Saṁsmṛtya, remembering. Rūpam, form. Ati, greatly. Adbhutam, wonderful. Hare, of Lord Kṛṣṇa. Vismaya, wonder. Me, my. Mahān, great. Rājan, O king. Hṛṣyāmi, I am enjoying. Cha, also. Punaḥ, repeatedly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. O King, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Kṛṣṇa, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. Please repeat. O King, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Kṛṣṇa, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. Purport. It appears that Sanjaya also, by the grace of Vyasa, could see the universal form Krishna exhibited to Arjuna. It is, of course, said that Lord Krishna had never exhibited such a form before. It was exhibited to Arjuna only. Yet some great devotees could also see the universal form of Krishna when it was shown to Arjuna, and Vyasa was one of them. He is one of the great devotees of the Lord, and he is considered to be a powerful incarnation of Krishna. Vyasa disclosed this to his disciple Sanjaya, who remembered that wonderful form of Krishna exhibited to Arjuna and enjoyed it repeatedly. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rūpam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Kalpadurubhischa Kripasindhavaivacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Jai, please forgive me for my tardiness. There was some misunderstanding. I was told to give class on the 30th, but today is the 28th. Anyway, hopefully I'm kind of shooting from the hip. Hopefully we establish something, for the benefit of everyone. So this is the end, almost, second to last verse of Bhagavad-Gita. 78 is the last verse. And interestingly enough, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he wrote commentaries for all verses, but he wrote 2 pages of commentaries from verses 74, 75, 76, 77 and 78. So 5 verses he wrote 2 pages of commentaries, and those 2 pages were stolen by rats. And he writes that Lord Ganesh has sent his mouse carrier, and Lord Ganesh has sent his mouse carrier and stolen those 2 pages. So let Lord Ganesh be pleased. Although I have put all the essential purports of Bhagavad-Gita completely summarized in those 2 pages, I will not rewrite those 2 pages. Thus ends my Sarartha Varshini Tika. So, unfortunately, we don't know. Only those rats know what he said. But Prabhupada is, compassionate. He's given us nice purports to these verses. And here, Prabhupada is speaking about the universal form, which is described very elaborately in the 11th chapter, right? 11th chapter, I think so. Yeah, the universal form. And that's when Krishna shows himself. Before that, he's already been established as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Chatushloki is spoken, and famous verse, Param Dhamma, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Idam Uttamam. Krishna already was accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Arjuna already understood that here is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But still for actually the lesser intelligent class of men, the universal form was shown. And there's a verse where Krishna says to Arjuna that may you have divine vision, like here, have the vision to see me. And then, he gets the eyes, and then he's able to see the universal form. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says something really nice. He says that in reality, Arjuna had perfect vision when he was seeing Krishna in front of him with 2 hands. And when Krishna gave him the Divya Chakshu, he actually had to cover his perfect vision. and he had to put coverings in front of his perfect vision so that he can see the universal form. And that is also confirmed because in the 11th chapter, in the end of the chapter, Krishna himself says to Arjuna that, and this what you're seeing, it's too much to handle. Universal form is very scary. Nowadays most of us live in cities with so many lights and so much busyness that it's very difficult to find a quiet place. But if you do find a quiet place where it's very dark and there's no lights, go in the middle of nowhere. I used to travel in Australia. So Australia is a very wide space with very little happening. It's mostly dead actually. It's so when you go from one place to another, there's a lot of road with nothing, and sometimes we would travel at night and it's pitch black. Some of these roads don't even have lights because it's there's nothing there. And if you stop and you turn off all the lights on an Amavasya night, you look up, it's actually scary. The amount of stars that are there, all you can see is stars because everything else is pitch black, And when you see that, I remember seeing it, the first time I saw that, I couldn't look at it for too long, I looked at it and it was like, whoa, what is this? This is too big. I cannot handle this. And we went back in the car and we kept going without looking up again. So that's just stars. That's not even the universal form. But when Arjuna saw the universal form, actually he couldn't handle it because how do you serve this? The nature of the jiva is to serve, and the best person to serve is Krishna. But Krishna is everything. So how do you serve everything? It's a little incomprehensible, and it's very confusing, mind-boggling. So when Arjuna saw this universal form, it wasn't compatible, and then he had to come down to lower, but not really lower, to the form of a four-handed Vishnu. And interestingly enough, even that was not satisfying. And finally, from that four-handed form, he came back to his two-handed form. And in that two-handed form, he said that this form is the most difficult to see. I'd like to read one purport, which we read probably a few days ago, but a repetition of a good thing is a good thing. This is very, very famous verse. You can chant along if you like. Man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru mam e vaishyasi satyam te pratijani priyosi me. And this is a really wonderful purport where Prabhupada says something so wonderful. I'll just read it. I'll read it straight from the Acharya. These words stress that one should concentrate his mind upon Krishna, the very form with two hands carrying a flute, the bluish boy with a beautiful face and a peacock feather in his hair. One other point to note is that Krishna is only carrying a flute in Vrindavan. So although this Krishna who's speaking Bhagavad-Gita is not carrying a flute, he shows him his two-handed form, but also in the next verse he says sarva dharman parityagya mam ekam sharanam vraja, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that vraja, in the word for word, if you look at it, it means go. Yeah, go. So if Krishna is already in front of Arjuna, then why is he telling him to go and surrender? Why doesn't he just say, surrender? But he tells him braja, which means to go. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that go, but to go where? The braja has two meanings. Braja means to go, but braja also means braja, like Vrindavan. So all of you are very intelligent. You've come to Vrindavan to take shelter of this two-handed form. Now listen to this, there's more. There are descriptions of Krishna found in the Brahma Samhita and other literatures. One should fix his mind on the original form of Godhead, Krishna. Now this is very significant. Our Acharya is telling us, one should not even divert his attention to other forms of the Lord. The Lord has multi-forms as Vishnu, Narayana, Ram, Varaha, etc. But a devotee should concentrate his mind on the form that was present before Arjuna. present before Arjuna, but carrying a flute in his two hands and having a peacock feather. Concentration of the mind on the form of Krishna constitutes the most confidential part of knowledge. And this is disclosed to Arjuna because Arjuna is the most dear friend of Krishna's. So one might say, because Prabhupada says the form that is present before Arjuna, then it means this Parthasarathi Krishna. You know, we have a temple in Delhi, Radha Parthasarathi. Very interesting deities because it's Parthasarathi but with Radharani. So, and the next verse is this Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. So we know that it's not, you know, it's not any Krishna. Actually, this Krishna that leaves Vrindavan, Vrindavana Parityagya Padam Ekam Nagachyati, which means Krishna never takes one step outside of Vrindavan. He never leaves Vrindavan. He's always in Vrindavan. So who goes to Mathura, who goes to Dwarka, who's on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? This is Vasudev Krishna. This is an expansion of Krishna. But one should fix his mind on the original form of Godhead. The original form of Godhead is Krishna carrying a flute, having peacock feather in his hair, and running around like a simple boy in a simple village called Vrindavan. So, you know, this verse that we're reading today, not to stray off too much, is talking about the universal form and how Prabhupada glorifies Vyasadeva, and he says how Vyasa was, interestingly enough, he says that Krishna showed his universal form and not everyone could see it, only those who were qualified. Some great devotees could also see the universal form of Krishna when it was shown to Arjuna. And Vyasadeva was one of them. Sorry. He was one of the great devotees of the Lord, and he is considered to be a powerful incarnation of Krishna. Vyasa disclosed this to his disciple Sanjaya, who remembered that wonderful form of Krishna exhibited to Arjuna and enjoyed it repeatedly. So Vyasadeva is also our Acharya. He's in our disciplic succession immediately after Brahma. Brahma, Vyasa. Brahma, Narada, Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva has given us all these wonderful texts, these works, these literatures for us to read. If you read the 5th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, it describes how Vyasadeva wrote everything. He compiled all the Vedas, all the Puranas, all the Itihasas, all the varieties of things that exist. But something in his heart was not satisfying him. He was feeling a bit incomplete. And it's a very heavy chapter actually, because Narada Muni, who's his spiritual master, comes and chastises him. It's actually quite interesting if you think about it, because Narada Muni is Jiva Tattva, right? And Vyasadeva is an incarnation of the Lord. He's a Shaktivesh avatar. So in one sense, he's non-different to Vishnu Tattva. So it's an interesting relationship how this Jiva is chastising, Vishnu Tattva. But he tells him that it's the beginning of the chapter. He glorifies him and he says, "You've done such a wonderful job. You compiled all these Vedas, the 4 Vedas. You compiled all these Puranas, 18 Puranas. You've compiled all these things so expertly in a way that people can gradually, step by step, understand absolute truth. They can come to the perfect position of God realization and self-realization." And he says, "Jai, good job." And then, but Vyasadeva is like, "Okay, all right, thanks, but I'm still a bit unsatisfied. Why am I so unsatisfied?" He questions. And then it went from glorifying him to chastising him. And then he says, "Yes, you have presented all of these things very nicely. And yes, everything is laid out for people to gradually take up, Krishna consciousness. But you have not given them the prayojan. You've not given them you've given so much that most people are just going to get confused. You've given so much variety. Yes, there is a lot of variety, but Prabhupada used to say, shoot for the white rhino. And so he told him that you haven't spoken Bhagavatam. You haven't spoken about Krishna's personal form. This Bhagavatam is taking darshan of Krishna himself. Every morning we come to the temple, hopefully, and we take darshan of the deities. And Prabhupada has taught us that we start at the lotus feet, and you take darshan of the lotus feet, and you go up to his thighs and his knees and so on and so forth, and finally you reach his smiling face. Prabhupada one time told one devotee, the devotee told him that, Prabhupada, I just see the lotus feet of Krishna, and Prabhupada responded to him, how can you live without seeing Krishna's face? That's what he said. So this Bhagavatam is taking darshan with the ears. Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj used to say like this, that Bhagavatam, in Kali Yuga, we take darshan with the ears. It's the most efficacious method of taking darshan of the Lord. Krishna is known as Kamadev. Kamadev has a bow, and the bow has 5 arrows, right? And the 5 arrows is not like a iron arrow. It's pushpabana. It's a flower arrow, right? So Cupid shoots these arrows of flowers, and what these 5 arrows are is his fragrance is one of the arrows. His sound, the way he sounds, is one of the arrows. His touch, basically the senses. His touch, his taste is one of the arrows. We like tasting prasadam. What else? Sound, touch, taste, smell. His sight, seeing him. But our acharyas have explained that in Kali Yuga, he shoots all of these arrows from time to time. We have to engage all of our senses in Krishna consciousness. But the primary means is the sound arrow, so to speak. He's shooting this arrow of sound. And more than anything, the primary method is by hearing the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We're supposed to come to the platform of constantly remembering Krishna. Here in this verse, it starts by saying Tacha saṁsmṛtya. It says it twice. Saṁsmṛtya means remembering. We have to be constantly engaged in remembering Krishna. And the best method of remembering something is by chanting the name, of the thing. If I say table, then immediately you remember a table. So if I say Krishna, then immediately you remember Krishna. But we also have to read Bhagavatam and go through all these other means of devotional service, because in that way your sambandha tattva gyan becomes solidified. And when your sambandha tattva gyan becomes solidified, then as you chant the name, it becomes more and more manifest. It becomes more and more as he is. There's different types of nam. There's nama bas, there's nama prad, there's shuddhanam. We want to chant shuddhanam, and we want to remember shuddhanam. So that takes a little bit of practice. And Vyasadeva, he has given us this Bhagavatam, which is also kind of a gradual elevation to seeing Krishna's face, to reaching the 10th canto, to reaching to this Krishna that's in Vrindavan. So just like that, this universal form is also kind of required. There's a purport, I think, in the 11th chapter, where Prabhupada explains how the universal form is real, but it's also not real, in the sense that sorry, I mistake myself. That's Virat Roop and Vishwaroop. They're two different things. The Virat Roop, I forget which one is what, but one of them is seeing Krishna, for example, like seeing the mountains and seeing how the mountains are his bones, seeing the rivers and seeing the rivers how they're his veins, seeing the birds flying in the sky and seeing that's his artistic nature. Actually, recently in Vrindavan, there's a lot of parrots flying around. I haven't seen it so much, but if you just go up in the evening time, there's a lot of parrots flying around, and it's very beautiful. And if you can appreciate Krishna's artistic nature by seeing how these parrots, fly around, one of the arts out of the 64 arts is speaking to birds. Actually, in Vrindavan, they do this. The gopis, they have bird messengers, and in Indulekha is the expert bird whisperer. She can speak to birds, you know. And there's an art. Actually, if you pay attention, just observe the birds. When there's 2 of them, they make a specific sound. When there's 5 or 6 of them together, they make another specific sound. When they're flying, they make another specific sound. So they have some language, you know. Krishna, out of Krishna's 64 qualities, one of them is he's an expert linguist. And expert linguist means he can speak to cows, he can speak to birds, he can speak to anyone, you know. He can speak Russian, he can speak English, he can speak Hindi, you know. He can speak Brajbhasa. I wonder what he speaks in the spiritual world. Actually, you know, it's a language of love more than anything. There's even one of the arts is speaking with the eyes. Maybe you've experienced this also. When you get to know someone quite nicely, then you can simply look at that person and he can read your mind and you can read his mind. You can have like a little conversation, you know. Maybe not very elaborate, but some subtleties you can exchange with persons. The main thing is establishing a relationship with a person. Then you're able to, doesn't matter what the language is, you know. And Krishna consciousness is the proof of this. Krishna consciousness is the proof of this because look at this, you know, there's people from all over the world coming and I went to Bali one time and most of the people there don't speak English, they don't speak anything, but I had such nice relationships with devotees. It's amazing, you know. All we did was we chanted Hare Krishna, we kind of sign language and spoke to each other, but the mood was so nice, so favorable, the relationship was so favorable that even though you don't speak the language, you can communicate, you know, with one another. Sometimes you have such an unfavorable mood that even if you know, speak the language, you just have no interest in speaking to that person because it's just very, you know, not nice. So like that, we have to establish our relationship with Krishna by going through all these texts that the acharyas have left us, you know, and engaging in Krishna consciousness. Tishtan braje tad anuragi jananugami kalam nayed aty-adbhutaṁ. The conclusion of all instructions, according to the nectar of instruction, is to simply live in Vrindavan and follow the residents of Vrindavan and try and understand their relationship with Krishna and try and assist their relationship with Krishna. And by doing that, kalam nayed, you spend your whole time in living like this. This is the conclusion of all instructions. Chant and remember the Nam Guna Rupa Lila and be absorbed. I would like to open it up for discussion because honestly speaking, I'm very super underprepared. So maybe devotees can say something and we can churn something out, churn some cream out of this verse. Jai. Yes?
At one point you mentioned about the senses.
Yeah.
Senses. So I try to be a gatekeeper at my senses.
Say that again, I didn't catch that.
I try to be a gatekeeper at my senses.
You try to keep a gatekeeper for your senses.
I'm observing what's coming in through.
Yeah.
We have 6 senses, our mind is attached to all the senses. So how would you advise to practice this when we are in the temple or in the premises? Like how to best utilize our senses going towards Krishna consciousness?
Well,
what we need to focus on, like different senses.
So Rupa Goswami says, Tan nama rupa charitadi sukirtananu. Which means that we have to perform kirtan. Kirtan means what? Kirtan means glorification of Krishna. And there are many, many ways to glorify Krishna. Tan nama rupa charitadi. There's nam kirtan, there's rupa kirtan, there's lila kirtan, there's guna kirtan. So when we're engaged, and these require your senses, you know, Nam Kirtan, which reigns supreme, simply means to engage the tongue. Engage the tongue in chanting. You'll find where Rupa Goswami, in the Nectar of Instruction, he starts with tongue. Right? That's the beginning. Nectar of Devotion, also. Ata Shri Krishna namadi na graham, what is it? Na bhavet graham indriye, sevanmukhi jivado, swayam eva saṁsmṛtya. The tongue is one of the senses, and when we take prasad, we chant this Sharirar Vidyajal Jarendriya Tahika Jive File Vishaya Sagare. You know Prabhupada's translation to that? It's really graphic. Prabhupada says, Sharirar Vidyajal, this body is a lump of ignorance. If you think of that, you know, like the image that I get is this lump of, I don't know, like meaty ignorance. And it is connected with a network of senses. So a lump of ignorance, a bunch of senses that are all connected, intertwined, and all of these networks lead to death. This is Prabhupada's translation. And out of all of these senses, the most voracious, the most intense is the tongue. So it's this lump of ignorance with all these senses, all leading to hell, all leading to death. But the one that's really pushing forward is the tongue, you know. And the tongue only has two activities. It vibrates to make some sound, or it likes to taste things. So this is first thing. First thing, engage your tongue. You know, sevanmukhi jiv ado. Ado immediately. First thing, you know, control the tongue. As soon as you control the tongue, the belly is controlled, the genitals is controlled. Then you become guru of the whole world. So control the tongue. How? By chanting Harinam primarily, and speaking about Krishna's qualities, Guna Kirtan, speaking about Krishna's form. Krishna's form is so beautiful. It is unimaginably beautiful. The descriptions that are given are so fantastic. You know, there was a Madhvacharya. Yeah, Madhvacharya, and you know these Digvijayas, these how do you say Digvijay? Scholar person came and challenged Madhvacharya that you're not a scholar, I'm a scholar, and he challenged him to write poetry describing the form of the Lord. And so he kind of accepted, and they both wrote poetry. And so this person who was challenging, he wrote very nice, actually very elaborate, wonderful descriptions of the Lord and how his form is. And Madhvacharya wrote 1,000 verses. Every single verse is just describing his shoes. 1,000 verses. And he's saying, oh, I'm sorry, I just got so absorbed in his shoe that I wrote 1,000 verses. I didn't have time to get to the rest. 1,000 verses. Just imagine how much you can be absorbed in the Lord to write 1,000 verses. I mean, I don't even know, how do you describe a shoe 1,000 different ways? You know, but Krishna is unlimited, and anything related to Krishna is also unlimited. So the tongue has to be engaged in chanting his name, his describing his form, describing his qualities. Primarily, Krishna has 64 qualities. You know, it's in Nectar of Devotion. You can read them. They're so beautiful. One of them is genius, and genius. The description that Prabhupada gives is that Radharani says something to Krishna, but he always flips it. You know. Like he'll make the word to mean something else. Like she'll say, where is your vas? You know, where were you? Is what she was asking. Vas is the word. Where were you? Why haven't you come? You were supposed to come at this time. And then he takes vas to mean cloth. So he says, what do you mean? My cloth is right here. You know, I'm wearing my clothes. And like this, you can read the whole thing. I don't remember how he it's so beautiful. It's very attractive to see this person, his qualities, 64 of them. So you read them, you chant them, and then the temple is so wonderful that we have such beautiful deities. I don't think anywhere there's such beautiful deities of Krishna, Balarama, Gaur Nitai, Radhesham. My God, Radharani, you know that Stapit who made him? So many people came to him and said, can you please make Radharani like this? And he just says, no, it's not possible, you know. This was only for Prabhupada. This is Prabhupada's Radharani. He manifested her, you know, with his heart. It's not going to happen ever again. So we have such a nice, beautiful deities. You can see them get completely absorbed in how she looks and how he looks and how they all look, and your mind, It starts with the tongue, but then it goes to your mind. Your mind will start churning. Actually, in Bhagavad-Gita, Arjuna says that this mind is like a uncontrollable wind. It's so difficult. And Krishna says, you cross the mind, basically you've reached me. Man mana bhava mad bhakto is actually a mental activity. Just always think of me. It's a mind thing, So you think of him in all these varieties of ways. But we have to remember also that in Kali Yuga, Hare Nama Hare Nama Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva 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 Gatiranyata. The primary means of attaining, pure Krishna consciousness is by chanting Harinam. That's why, again, in our temple, like you said, coming to the temple, we have a 24-hour kirtan, constant kirtan, for the benefit of the whole world, for the benefit of the people that walk in here. So you sit down and you engage yourself in chanting, And automatically, as you associate with devotees, you'll get engaged in so many varieties of ways, and you'll feel completely satisfied, and you won't want anything else. Jai.
I used to see mountains and mountains, rivers as rivers, in the nature, and I'll try to see what you said. I'll try to find Krishna in the nature.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I did observe so many parrots here. I thought they were all year round.
No, I don't know. Maybe I wasn't conscious of them before, and I'm starting to notice them now. But I see so many, like.
There are many.
They're Vrindavan's parrots.
Jai. Yes, for sure.
They're taking messages for Radharani and Krishna.
Jai, Jai, Jai.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, see the last line, it says that Chandra is saying that he remembered that wonderful form of Krishna exhibited to Arjuna and enjoyed it repeatedly.
Yeah.
He's talking about the universal form.
Well, that's what it seems like.
Yeah, so in 11.24, Arjuna, he is perturbed by fear. And he says, I can no longer maintain my steadiness or equilibrium of mind. And next one, he says that he is completely disturbed and bewildered.
Which one? 11 what?
11.24.
Really? Here? Okay. Alright, yeah.
Yeah, so Arjuna was completely in fear when he saw this, the teeth and the blazing fire. And this is one side, like Arjuna sees it very disturbing, and it wasn't pleasing to Arjuna, this form at all. He was scared and in fear and bewilderment. But Sanjay was very happy to see this.
Well, when Krishna comes into the arena, Kamsa's arena, then Kamsa sees him as death, and when Krishna comes into the arena of Kamsa's arena, when he finally killed him there, Kamsa sees him as death personified, and the young girls see him as a very beautiful boy that they would like to marry, and the wrestlers see him as a good competition, to beat him up. So everyone's different. According to their bhav. I don't know who Sanjaya is. I'm not sure what his relationship with Krishna is, but Arjuna is his friend that sits on his bed and speaks to him. So for Arjuna, this form doesn't make sense. It's too, it's too much. It's like Mother Yashoda, when she sees his mouth, it's too much. But for sages, it's not too much.
Yeah, they are happy to.
Yeah. It almost sounds like the sages know more, because they're not bewildered. They're equipoised to see this form. But the reality is, who is Krishna? Krishna really is just a cowherd boy in Vrindavan. That's who he is. These other manifestations, these opulent manifestations that he shows, like when he opened his mouth and he showed the universal form, that is Vasudeva Krishna. And Mother Yashoda doesn't recognize this boy. Who is this? Is this my son? No, because the reality is that boy is actually not her son. That's Vasudeva Krishna. He doesn't belong there. So it's going against the flow.
The devotees just relate to.
Yeah, according to their bhav, whatever it may be. Jai, does anyone have? Yes, Buddha. Oh, yeah.
That he said Narada and Vyasa, that conversation. Actually, in the first canto in the index, Prabhupada, Narada is considered as one of the incarnations.
Oh yeah, that's also true. Yeah.
he's a Kshatriya Vaishya.
Yeah, yeah. But he also specifically, he, what's the word? Represents Jiva Tattva. For example, in the Pancha Tattva, Srivas Thakur is Narad Muni, and he represents Jiva Tattva. Narad Muni is the source of inspiration for all Jivas, because he, as a Jiva, you can say in that sense he's an incarnation, that Krishna has empowered him as a Jiva to inspire all other Jivas, that hey, you can do it too. You know, if Narad Muni can do it, then you can do it. Because in technical terms, there's no difference between one you Jiva, me Jiva, and Narad Muni Jiva. The only difference is he's a pure devotee and we're conditioned. But we can also get to his platform.
Also, we can safely say that Prabhupada is a Kshatriya Vaishya.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. I mean, you know, they're listed in Shastra. Kshatriya Vaishya avatars are listed. Maybe A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is not listed somewhere in the Shastra, but yeah, all right, yeah, Jay. You know, devotees have a lot of bhav and they can pull out anything from anywhere. But if you just observe his activities, and if you see what he's done, it's very clearly evident that he was very much empowered, you know, by Nitai's Shakti. It's very clear. There's no one argues with this. He's an empowerment, you know, Shakti of Nitai that came to spread the movement. He came to do a job. He did it quite wonderfully, and thank God he did it. Otherwise, where would we be?
One more thing, it says the wonderful form of Lord Krishna. So Prabhupada gives the story that up in the last moment, Akbar Birbal, he wants to see the face of a beautiful girl, that daughter of Akbar, the dying man. So the opposite gender, the mind again and again wants to see the beauty. So how is it going to happen with Krishna, you know? Again and again, it says he rejoiced again and again. That wonderful form of Lord Krishna. It has to be, the attraction to the opposite gender has to be replaced towards the Supreme Lord. So how that can happen, that Krishna can be functionally...
Well, how does it happen with the opposite gender? You know, if you look at the opposite sex, and if you spend time with the opposite sex, then the attachment increases. Contemplation of the mind is the beginning, right? And that's how attachment comes. So it's the exact same thing. Contemplation of the mind, but in Nam, Guna, Rupa and Leela. See, Krishna is really attractive. I really like this word that Rupa Goswami uses in this verse where he explains Syat Krishna Nama Charita Di Sitaptya Vidya, that Krishna's name is so sweet. Krishna's form is so sweet. Sita means sweet. Sitaptya Vidya. But avidya, the bile secretion has become so much that the pito tapa, that means the pita has become so much that something so sweet has become bitter. Rasanasya na rochikanu. Right? He says that the tongue is not able to feel the sweetness of such a sweet thing. And he says nu. I said this last time as well, but anyway, repetition of a good thing is a good thing. So nu means, Prabhupada translates nu as, oh how wonderful. It basically means wow. So he's saying that something so sweet has become so bitter. Wow. You know? But then he says, if every day kintu adarad adidinam, if every day kalu saiva jushta, you keep tasting this, you just keep taking it, then by hearing, contemplation of the mind is the beginning of attachment. So you contemplate your mind on Krishna's form, name, you know, qualities, pastimes. It's very attractive. Slowly but surely, kramad bhavati, slowly but surely, gradually, you will come to the platform of rag bhakti, of being spontaneously attached to Krishna. It will happen, because our acharyas have said so. So it will happen.
One question, please.
But Prabhuji had something.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lord. Very nice, good class. I have two basic questions which I am unable to understand. One is, how Narada as Jeev Tattva chastised to Rasdevji as a Vishnu form or Lord incarnation, one. And another is, what is the difference between the Krishna form in Vrindavan and as Vasudev outside Vrindavan?
So, I mean, Narad Muni is a very, very exalted personality. and he has a very strong relationship with Krishna. And when you have a very deep, intimate connection with Krishna, then these rasas exist, like in Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, Mother Yashoda, she's not a jiva, but still, Mother Yashoda is chastising Krishna. The gopis are chastising Krishna. They're treating him like an ordinary, extraordinary boy. So that is just relationship. That is just rasa, exchange of rasa. If everything is awe and reverence, then there's not a lot of rasa. There is some rasa and awe and reverence also, but it's not so much. So that's just relationship. I mean, I'm not sure if the acharyas have said anything about Narad Muni and Vyasadeva and his jiva position, Vishnu
Why
Tattva.
Narad Muni has been explained as a jiva tattva?
He represents that. Because that's the potential of the jiva. That's what any of us we can be there, in that platform. Everything is Krishna. Simultaneously, everything is not Krishna. We are part and parcel of Krishna. We have a relationship with Him, which is eternal. And it is very intimate, very deep. Narad Muni has achieved the perfection of being a jiva, of having that intimate, deep relationship with Krishna. And he's a source of inspiration. And he literally, what does he do? He just travels. Prabhupada calls him the transcendental spaceman. That's what Prabhupada calls him. That's his nickname, that Prabhupada is given. The transcendental spaceman travels throughout space, goes to different planets, and inspires jivas to achieve their full potential and go back to Vrindavan.
That's good. But then how Vyasadeva ji as the incarnation of Lord get confused? How he can be confused while he has explained so many Vedas and so many literary things he have mentioned already?
Krishna does things in a certain way, like I said previously, to squeeze out rasa, to make it more dramatic. There is no need for anyone to be confused. There is no need for us to be in the material world altogether. There's no need for anything in all reality. Absolute is one and he's completely atmaram, he's completely satisfied. Why have anything at all? But that's boring like anything. And Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. And being the supreme enjoyer, when you watch a movie, okay, very simple to understand. When you watch a movie, something has to go wrong in the movie, otherwise it's no fun. And then that wrong thing has to be solved. Then it's like, woo, jai. Right? For kirtan, for a glorification, you need Krishna to kill a demon. Then we can glorify him. Oh, he killed this demon. Us going back home, back to Godhead, is a wonderful kirtan. It's glorification of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. This is the best form of kirtan. By chanting Hari Nam, by going back to your constitutional position, you're performing great kirtan. You're glorifying Krishna like anything. That look at this insignificant speck of dust who was in this material gutter for so long. They say like Modi was a samosa chatwala or something, and now he's become the president of the Prime Minister of India. And it's wow, what a story. It's a nice story. So just like that, the jiva, the insignificant speck of dust who was trying to be Krishna, which is so funny, his insignificant thing, trying to be Krishna in the material world, has now come to this platform of serving Krishna in such an intimate way. What a kirtan that is. It's just rasa. Krishna does these things to. And also, Vyasadeva is a Shakti-Vesh avatar. He's not like a direct incarnation. He's also his separate identity, I guess. I don't know how it works.
And Krishna and Vasudeva.
So there's a huge difference. So Krishna in Vrindavan is the original supreme personality of Godhead from whom everything emanates. Vasudeva Krishna is one of those emanations. Simply put.
Vasudeva Krishna has less degree
Well,
compared to Krishna in Vrindavan.
you don't want to say less or more because he's the same person. He's a Kandu, the original Kandu, and another Kandu. But the original Kandu is always the original Kandu. One way that our acharyas have explained because Vaikuntha is also a nice place. You don't want to offend the Vaikuntha Vasis, You don't want to offend those who are attached to worshipping Vasudeva Krishna. But it's just a different level of intensity. Even in Vrindavan, Mother Yashoda is very exalted, but the intensity of the gopis' love, Madhurya Ras, is more intense. Not to say that Vatsalya Ras is lower, it's not lower, it's also extremely high. But it's just a difference in intensity, difference of intimacy between Krishna.
It's Narayan Krishna.
Yeah.
Narayan Krishna. This is Gopal Krishna.
Thank you.
Jai.
Now we have a question.
Yes.
Okay, this is 18.71.
BG-18.71.
Yes. So can you come down to the last paragraph? The last fourth line from below. Those who are righteous in performing devotional service, but who are not pure,
Pole star.
can attain the planetary system or the pole star. Right? So now, we as per like Srila Prabhupada, and we hear that if one doesn't finish their spiritual life in this lifetime, yes?
Yeah.
That means that we don't become pure, we are not qualified to go back to the spiritual world. So then we take birth in a devotee family and complete our spiritual life and go back, home back to Godhead. But this is saying that then that person who is not pure goes where? To Dhruva Loka and other places.
I'm not sure about these technical things, Mataji, to be honest with you. Yeah, here he says you go. So yeah, Prabhupada says, the jivas is moving around. Yeah, I'm not sure. You'll have to ask someone else. It's not something that I think of.
Yeah, because it just we came there, that's why. Right, and it says devotional service.
Yeah. So here it says, so maybe some, maybe not all. Those, some, I don't know. I don't know how it works. I don't really think of this too much.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
No,
Mataji. That's nice. It's nice that you notice this, but I don't really know how to answer you. Please forgive me.
No, don't say
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All right.
You are somebody. You are somebody in the ashram senior.
Yes, sure. If I find out, then I'll
important, no?
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Is there anything someone would like to say, Prabhu?
Mata, is which tattva is this problem? Chaitanya was saying, you are my mother.
Yes.
For this and that, very yes. And so you don't worry about trying to pacify her. But so there must be some expansion of
Another thing I just remembered that when Mahaprabhu goes, when he leaves Navadvip, goes to Puri, he tells Mother Sachi that that you're my eternal mother. And also one thing he says that all the mouths of pure devotees are non-different to you. All of the mouth, like the mouth of a pure devotee, is Sachi. Because when they chant Shuddhanam, I take birth from their mouth. So he says their mouth is non-different to you. According to Jaiva Dharma, the way it's described there is Radharani is called Mula Prakriti. Mula Prakriti. So, Mula means the root. And she is the origin of... It explains how Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And his desire to enjoy manifests as Mula Prakriti, which is Radharani herself, who's standing there in our altar. And from her expands Sandini, Haladini, and Samvit Shakti. And then there's Satchit Ananda in each. In Sandini there's Satchit Ananda, in Haladini there's Satchit Ananda, and in Sandini, Haladini, Samvit there's Satchit Ananda. And then she expands as so that's the whole spiritual world basically, is this. This is the crux of the spiritual world. And then she reflects that and expands as Durga in this material world. So the associates of Krishna, in that section of Jaiva Dharma, it's described how the male associates of Krishna come from the Sandini potency, which is Balaram. So, according to this description, even Balaram is coming from Radharani. So it's far out actually. You have to. But she is the original Mula Prakriti. So all energies come from her. So even Balaram, and it says all the male associates in Vrindavan, so all the cowherd boys, they expand from Balaram himself, like Subal, Sridham, Vasudham, Sudham, all of them are expanding from Balaram, and all the female associates of Krishna expand from Radharani directly, from Radharani. And so the eternal associates, they're non-different to Krishna in one sense. They are, basically the same but different. we jiva also to some degree we're non-different to Krishna, but our degree, yeah. We also come from Mula Prakriti. We also come. Everything is Radharani. That's the answer. But it can be taken a little impersonal, so we have to explain it in a nice way, you know. Yeah. It's actually Bhaktivinoda Thakur laid it out in a little understandable way in Jaiva Dharma. It's not so hard to follow. If you read that section, it's nice. It makes sense.
Didn't comprehend that. You have to read again.
Yeah. Jai. Okay, if there's no more questions or comments, then we'll end here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki Jai.